Tonight we have Rabbi Merrill Shapiro, who is head of the, I'm not sure what your official title is with AU.
Now just the Atlantic Coast chapter.
Okay.
I actually turned out on the National Board of Trustees, but I remain the immediate past president of the National Board of Trustees.
Okay, thank you. And he's going to talk to us about Americans United and the importance of religion and government not being entangled.
Yeah.
So I'm going to spotlight you now, Merrill. So you have the floor, and you can go for it.
Thank you very much, Judy. As I've mentioned, I'm honored and flattered to have been asked to speak, and I hope it's the beginning of an ongoing relationship. I think we have a lot of common interests that we really need to join our voices together. The sum of our parts will, the whole will be greater than the sum of our parts. Let me get that right backwards. Secondly, I'm about to demonstrate to you that I know virtually nothing about putting together a PowerPoint presentation, and a little bit less than that about Zoom and technology and so on. So if you'll please forgive me, and if there's any problem you encounter with the screen, please yell and scream. And in fact, should there be a problem, I've been blown off before by a thunderstorm, but here's my contact information, and on issues related to separation of church and state, you can call me anytime. You really feel free to be in touch with the slightest inquiry. All of your questions are of great interest. You can even, I'll make this one, I don't know how many of you get an opportunity to talk with a rabbi. You can talk to me about rabbi issues, and towards the end of this meeting, if you'd like, you can ask me rabbi questions not necessarily related to separation of church and state. I'd be happy to answer. I do not get offended. No question is out of bounds. A dumb question I was taught in my college days is exactly that. If you think of what dumb means, it means unvoiced, and the unvoiced question is the question that is dumb. So don't leave any dumb questions, speak them up. I'd be happy to hear them. You should know my wife, Robin, and introduce her here. All that stuff is from what's called the filter that my 12-year-old grandchildren put in. I know nothing about it, but that's Robin. And I tell you that because this is my older daughter, Sarah, who lives in New York, and younger daughter, Amy, who lives in Jacksonville. The reason I introduce you to them is so that you'll know that Robin and I raised these girls through their teenage years. So if you wish to make me feel comfortable during this presentation, you'll interrupt me while I'm speaking. And so you can feel free to stop and wave a hand or whatever. I'll count on Judy to keep an eye on everybody, or put up your hand through the device at the bottom of the screen. You can always stop me. So quickly, I'm going to go through, don't tell them I said this, but this is sort of the Department of Crash Commercialism of Americans United for Separation of Church and State, and let you know who they are, and then we'll talk about Florida, which is, there's a lot to talk about. So we're a nonpartisan organization dedicated to separation of church and state, ensuring religious freedom. You see the First Amendment, it's here. Notice, by the way, and because it's a great concern at Americans United for Separation of Church and State, that the condition of non-belief is not as protected as the conditions of religions or various and sundry religions. The condition of non-belief, not necessarily, and we've had to fight issues over that. What about atheists? What about non-believers? What about agnostics, free thinkers, and so on? But the basis of what we stand for is here in the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. And we're quick to point out, it's first for a reason. It's first for a reason. We were founded in 1947. We've been active through the ages. Judy also has copies of these slides if you'd like to look at them further, or I'll be happy to email them to you as well if you email me. I'm not going to take all of that time. We believe in the constitutional right to practice the religion of your choice, or as you'll see, and it's a parenthetic remark, I'm afraid, or refrain from taking part in any religion. It's entirely up to you. The government must remain neutral on religious questions. We'll talk about that. So we have a legal department, a legislative, a grassroots, a communications department. This has changed recently. Barry Lynn has retired. We have a new CEO, and we've also, James, you'll have to unmute. I see your hand, just you have to unmute.
Would you go slower through the slides so I can
Sure.
have time to actually read the bullets?
Okay.
You're clicking so fast I can't keep up with you.
I wanted to dispense with the boilerplate, but that's okay. Shall I go back?
If you'd go back one slide, I would appreciate it.
There's this, so here's what we believe. If I speed up again, please stop me.
Okay.
There's
fine.
that. And again, I'll be happy to send you, even in Costa Rica with no extra charge, I'll email you all of these slides and you can read them yourself.
Okay, and this one you can hold a while, so I
Okay,
can.
go ahead. I'll and you can read it. My wife worked for many years as a public school teacher in Columbus, Ohio, and she complained constantly that the principals all would gather the teachers for a meeting, hand them a piece of paper, and then the meeting would consist of the principal reading to everybody what they had on the piece of paper anyway. So I won't read all of this to you, but feel free to interrupt me and feel free to ask questions about any points. Okay, Jim,
Okay.
can I go on?
I'm good.
Okay, so here are some of our projects. We have more. With our new CEO, frankly, in the past, women's reproductive rights were not always seen as an issue related to separation of church and state. We've come around on that one. And there's also another project or two about women's reproductive rights. What that means. As a separate issue, we really see a religious basis for, I personally see a religious basis in Genesis chapter 2 that states clearly that abortion is not murder. But please don't tell our Roman Catholic friends. So here's the issue of public schools. We have several actions, including a lawsuit ready against the state of Florida and the governor. But COVID-19 has put so much on the back burner, or certainly in storage. We have gone. I'll introduce you later, show you a picture in bullet number 3 of and I'm trying to go slow, so Jim, you can take a look and mull over these bullet points. But in item number 3, I'll introduce you to the head of the Florida State Board of Education and share a quote with you that says, more or less, over my dead body will evolution be taught in the public schools of the state of Florida. By the way, today is the 95th anniversary of the beginning of the voir dire, the selection of a jury in the John T. Scopes monkey trial of 1925 in Tennessee. These are faith-based initiatives are a concern as well. I'll hold that for a minute, Jim. Maybe you should nod or give me a signal. But again, I'll go back to them as well. There are faiths, and we'll see this in schools as well, that are very well organized to grab government dollars and empty funds so that smaller, even religious schools or smaller secular schools, do not get the money because there are certain church organizations that have offices full of executives and each with a secretary that are designed for no other reason than to find government grants and bring that money into their system. This is, and even locally, we have begun to see more and more invocations at county commission meetings, city council meetings, and the Board of Education. Now, Board of Educations, the Supreme Court has noted, are not legislative bodies. And therefore, number one, not legislative bodies, and therefore they are not subject to the rules about invocations. They may not start a Board of Education meeting with an invocation. That's number one. Number two, go ahead. Hey, did somebody say something? You can. Go ahead. Number two is Supreme Court has said that since even before the start of our country, before July 4, 1776, or the adoption of the Constitution in 1789, 1790, there was a custom of beginning legislative meetings with prayers. And we have argued successfully that that's fine, but there were no such things as public school boards in the 1790s up until certainly through the first quarter of the 19th century. It just didn't exist, so they can't claim that they are grandfathered in by any means.
If I might interrupt for a moment.
And it's not an interruption. Go ahead.
Not too long ago, we were asked to do an invocation at the Pinellas County School Board, which I gave, and ended it by telling them that what they were doing was unconstitutional.
Good, right. The same thing has happened in Jacksonville, by the way, once. Wait, Judy, you gave it at the Board of Education or at the City Council or Commission?
Pinellas County School Board.
Oh, school board. Yeah, no, school boards, exactly. They actually also fall under the restrictions about prayer in schools.
Yes.
Now, again.
But I told them that, that prayer in school.
Okay. Americans United for Separation, and I would urge all of you to use Americans United for Separation of Church and State at www.au.org, and they will send resources that you could forward. And we are in the habit of forwarding to each and filling email boxes of each school board member with all sorts of information, and not flooding them all at once, but we'll do one every Monday for 6 or 8 weeks, some other aspect or some other legal decision that notes that they're not permitted to begin with invocations. Aside from the moral issue of how divisive an invocation that talks about God is, and who's God, and what God. And there are those who don't believe in God, and there are those who believe in God who's different from the belief that you have about God. It's very much problematic, obviously. So now here, this is the new, reflects some of the reproductive rights, and AU standing up will take places, will advocate, will lobby, will organize lobbying efforts in state and national legislatures to set aside bills that limit abortion. We're quite pleased and surprised that Chief Justice John Roberts' decision as far as rendering abortion available, and we're looking very carefully at the nature of the Supreme Court, and that has to do with issues related to election and the health of. I understand you're not prayers, but in the Jewish tradition, we pray for Justice Ginsburg's health and robustness constantly, for obvious reasons.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you once again, but did you see the ruling that was just made for the Satanic Temple?
Yeah.
About abortion?
Which ruling? There's in the Supreme.
They sued under RFRA, Religious Freedom Restoration Act.
Yeah.
That they could not be denied abortion because it was in their religion that abortion was okay.
Yeah. It's interesting, the cases that are taking place. By the way, I'll refer you to, if you'd like, the Pew research people on religion and American life that send out notices of these cases, particularly legal cases. I also personally find it interesting. I haven't in the past few months, but I used to be an avid reader of a bulletin called the Florida Baptist Witness. So it's most interesting to see what the other side is thinking. This is more and more troubling, and we expect in the fall again that there'll be forgot what they call it, Politics Sunday. I think there's a Sunday about 2 weeks before the election, so it'll be late October, in which pastors use their pulpits to speak out on political and social issues, something that the American Red Cross, Kidney Foundation, any other 501c3 that is tax-exempt organization cannot, well, can, but they have to give up their religious exemptions. And so it's very concerning that churches have become politicized, and it's obviously wrong. And it's, by the way, it's divisive for the church as well. And you can imagine in our era, again, not to revert too much to politics, but certainly there are synagogue groups that the Trump people will not talk to the Democrat, the Biden people, and the Biden people will not talk to the Trump people, and that does not make for a strong community by any means. So you have the right, and we stress, to believe or not believe. And that's court, that comes from the courts, not from the Constitution. You get to choose where your money goes, but not in Florida, I'm afraid. Again, to make your own decisions about healthcare, to marry the person you love, regardless of their gender, and to live life as you see fit. So this is a new case we're just watching, by the way. There's an organization in Chicago, and Jim, this was not meant for everybody to read the whole thing anyway. This, as you see, it's filed on August the 3rd, so it's relatively new. There's an organization called Separation of Hinduism from Our Schools. And the Chicago schools have instituted a program called Quiet Time, about meditation, to calm everybody down. They say it's Hinduism. By the way, there are the same objections in many school systems with regard to teaching yoga in physical education. It's a religious ritual, you can't do it. And here it's being discovered. The Espinosa versus Montana reflects a case, 2 cases, maybe in 3 cases we've had in Florida, and one yet to come, by the way, about the state funding religious schools. We lost that one, and Espinosa versus Montana says the state may fund religious schools. However, and you see this is August 4th, it's now learned that religious people are also going to be funding pagan celebrations. Some of you may have gone to Tallahassee to know that at Christmas time, in the rotunda of the Capitol, there's a Christian religious creche, I'm not sure what, and there's also a Festivus tree, which is pagan, Wiccan, and even now a holiday display by the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. If you're not familiar with the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, you can Google that too, or I'll get you the information. It goes to point out, we hope to confuse and to upset people enough that they say, forget it, maybe we as government have no place in religion, which to them might be a new concept. We point out that separation of church and state is a conservative value that was very, very important to the very founders of our country, and well before the founding of our country. And Roger Williams left Massachusetts Bay Colony to find ultimately Providence and the colony in the state of Rhode Island on religious freedom grounds. Let's say, so yeah, pagan schools can receive government funds. If religious schools can, pagan ones can as well. Now, here's my most concerning issue. I actually stuck this in the middle because I found it. Let's, one more slide, hang on. So there is, if you're not familiar with it, in the state of Florida, something called, it's there on the 4th line of the body of this explanation, the Florida Tax Credit Scholarship, and they call it a program, we call it a scheme. The law provides state tax credits for contributions to nonprofit scholarship funding organizations. didn't want to get in too much trouble, so I didn't bring you a list of the organizations that contribute to this program, but there are many, as you see at the bottom line. The grand total of contributions for this year, fiscal year, is limited to a mere $873 million, almost $1 billion. So how does it work? Because of lawsuits that we, Americans United, participated in against Governor Bush and against Governor Scott, and we're preparing them against Governor DeSantis, the state recognized it could not directly give funds to a religious school. One of them was by somebody from the school board or some official, perhaps Manatee County, I'm not sure which, but because the state was giving out scholarships to Clearwater Christian College for people who were studying to be ordained as religious ministers. So that was found to be illegal. The church and right-wing politicians went to an organization out of Chicago called ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Committee, something like that. They designed legislation, and they designed the following diabolical work around this problem. They said, fine, the state will not give money to religious schools. However, when a corporation owes tax credits, owes taxes corporate, by the way, the word corporate is missing here. It's a Florida corporate tax. So when a corporation, let me use Walgreens as an example because they are one, has a business tax liability in Florida of, I'm picking the number off the top of my head, $100,000. They can, of course, write a $100,000 check to the Treasury of the state of Florida and pay their bill. But now they can also write a $100,000 check to, as you see towards the bottom of that paragraph, an SFO, a scholarship funding organization. The largest one and most important one in Florida is called Step Up for Students, and is located in your vicinity somewhere. I've argued with its founder, Doug Tuthill, many times, ad nauseum, I might add. And so Walgreens, instead of giving $100,000 and paying its tax bill, can give $100,000 to Step Up for Students and get a dollar for dollar credit from the state government for its tax bill, and therefore will not have to pay any state taxes. The money will go to the scholarship funding organization, Step Up for Students. By the way, Step Up, we believe this is not readily available information. That Step Up for Students, being a scholarship funding organization, is also an Internal Revenue Code 501c3 organization. And we believe Walgreens then gets a significant federal tax deduction as well for making a contribution to a charitable organization. Step Up for Students takes this $100,000 and distributes it in scholarships around the state to the tune now of close to, they're the only one and the largest one, to close to $873 million of Florida taxpayer, of your tax dollars and mine, go to pay for these scholarships. On Step Up for Students, it will note that 81% of the dollars that they can are used to pay for the tuition in private school. 100% is used for private school tuitions, many often no better than a local public school. But 81% of it goes to religious schools. So the money from Step Up for Students comes from Walgreens, looks like it comes from Walgreens, and maybe it does, comes from Walgreens and goes to Step Up for Students and goes to religious education. And everyone says, the people I've argued with, it's entirely voluntary on Walgreens' part, it's fine. And I would urge you to respond as well. When the $100,000 of Walgreens does not get into the treasury of the state of Florida, who makes up that $100,000 that doesn't reach our state treasury? Because the answer is you and me and every citizen. So what's diabolical about this system is we wind up paying for religious education. And if you think about that, the Catholics of the state of Florida are paying, and I can get you the names and you can go to the Step Up for Students website. The Catholics in the state of Florida, who are the biggest beneficiaries of this, because again, they have troops and legions of people ready to grab that money as best they can. The Catholics are also funding Seventh-day Adventist education. And Seventh-day Adventists teach their students that the Pope is the Antichrist. And that the Baptists of Florida are paying to educate Muslims, not that there's anything wrong with Muslims. And the Methodists of Florida are paying for a lot of voucher money to go to Clearwater Academy and are teaching about Scientology. And the Presbyterians are going to fund schools that teach that the burning of the Quran on the front lawn of your church is a good thing. And all of us are paying to teach kids to be good disciples of, I think it's Westwood Baptist, and go to the funerals of veterans and yell out that they're fags and the most vile and humiliating and awful kinds of things. We are paying for that. And you'll see what else we're paying for as well. And this is a fight that we have waged for quite some time. Governor Bush, Jeb Bush, was a big fan of this program. Lots of people are a big fan because they call it school choice. Let's see, they call it school choice, and choice is, after all, good. If we rescind this program, we're removing choice. That's quite a misnomer, by the way, because I think we all grew up in a world where our parents had a choice in our kids could send us to the public schools, a fancy private school, a local Catholic school. There was choice. The difference was, in the old days, our parents had to pay for it. Under these programs, we get the state to pay for it. And who funds those state educational programs? You and I, all our friends and neighbors in Florida, and all the citizens of our good state. So we are concerned. One of the things that we fight about, one of the pieces of ammunition is here on the screen now. The state legislators and the people in Tallahassee will argue that the public schools aren't serving the needs of the kids, and it's not right, and kids are stuck in bad public schools, and that's how the zip code into which you are born determines your fate. And so we turn to Article 9 of the Florida Constitution here in front of you. As I said, I don't like to read what's on the screen, but this is important enough. It's about public education. The education of children is a fundamental value of the people of the state of Florida. It is therefore a paramount duty of the state to make adequate provision for the education of all children residing within its borders. Adequate provision for the education. Adequate, now I'm going to go on to the next sentence. Adequate provision shall be made by law for a uniform, efficient, safe, and that's what that means in COVID-19 era is an issue, secure, what that means in the post-Parkland era is also, and high quality system of free public schools. So our legislature has cut the funding of education to the bone and has failed to maintain and I'm reading 4 lines from the bottom of this paragraph, high quality system of free public schools. They failed. So what is their answer? Not to engage here, but let's send money to private schools and they can do better. Now recently, and I'll send you these articles, I believe I can send them to you, from the Orlando Sentinel, they've done an expose on many of the schools receiving this voucher money. They went to one school, the reporters went to one school looking for the principal and says, oh, the principal's not here on the campus right now. He's at Valencia Community College working towards his bachelor's degree. A principal of the school. They went to other schools that didn't have adequate bathroom facilities. They went to other schools and then they looked at the grades that the students of these schools got, and they were often lower than if the kids had just gone to the public schools nearby. You'll notice a lot of limitations of testing, by the way, so you can't compare apples to apples. Florida does that on a national level. You can't compare the quality of Florida education to the education provided by the state of Georgia or Mississippi or Alabama. A lot of trickery going on as far as that's concerned. And so please keep in mind that your legislator, your state representative, your state senator, just like my state representative and senator, are to provide a high quality, 4 lines from the bottom, high quality system of free public schools, okay, that allows students to obtain a high quality of education. And they are failing, and so they leave us funding religious education. This will move. Okay, so here are the laws. Yeah, okay. Here's the laws authorizing, and this is from the state constitution, the state statutes, of the rules that the legislature can, in fact, do this kind of program, despite what their fundamental obligation is. And Jim, if you'll allow me, and I'm concerned about running out of time, a lot of gobbledygook here, but 3 paragraphs on the bottom: enable taxpayers to make private voluntary contributions to nonprofit scholarship funding organizations in order to promote the welfare of the scholarship funding organizations, and give that money to kids to buy education in local Catholic schools, and local Baptist schools, and local schools of all sorts that teach religion, often contrary to what you and I believe. Again, it pretty much says the same thing. Now, the state government recognizes that they cannot prescribe the standards or curriculum for private schools. And we'll see that in just a few minutes, what that means. But if they decide that reading and writing is not important, then they can remove it from their curriculum. The state cannot prescribe the standards for these private schools. Yeah, well, my wife, the teacher, is yelling from the next room that they don't teach cursive anyway, but I think cursive is going. I don't think anybody's teaching writing of any kind, and they're not even teaching keyboarding, but somehow our kids figure it out. So the state can't tell them what to do, but they can give them $800 million, and that will surely go up. By the way, here you see, and this was what earlier slide rectified, it was only $229 million in 2012, 2013. It's now up to 800 million and change, and is heading towards $1 billion very quickly. If we were to distribute that in Pinellas County on a per student basis, that would mean a lot of money that the school board of Pinellas County would have to improve the public schools, rather than, this is my own commentary, throw it away on private religious schools. So what do these schools teach? A, dinosaurs and humans probably hung out together. Okay, so because the world is only 6,000 to 10,000 years old, there had to be dinosaurs on Noah's Ark. And in fact, as we're fond of saying, Adam and Eve must have ridden their dinosaurs to church every Sunday. Okay. Dragons were totally real. Okay. And some scientists say, yes, what I've done here, this is old, it needs to be updated. You're welcome to school. Some of these schools use from Bob Jones University Press. So this is the textbook. I urge you to go to a local private religious school and see if you can get a look at their textbooks. They'll be stunned. One of the books, I'll show you, that God used the Trail of Tears to bring many Indians to Christ. You and I are paying for this education. It comes out of our pockets with our tax dollars. Hmm? The slides aren't moving. Okay, so that's from a textbook, America, Land That I Love, the teacher's edition, A. Becca book. A. Becca book is Pensacola Christian College. Went into the publishing of school books for private religious schools. The wife of the chancellor of Pensacola Christian College, named was Rebecca. And so they created A. Becca Book Company, and that's where the name comes from. In Jacksonville, there are churches that have schools that hang out and say, oh, we are good because we use the A. Becca Book curriculum, and we use their textbooks, and we use their entire system. If you look around your community, surely you can find church schools, public schools, to which vouchers or kids can leave the public school, take a $7,000, $10,000 tuition voucher, go to a private public school that uses A. Becca Books curriculum. Africa Needs Religion. That's taught in a textbook called Old World History and Geography and Christian Perspective by this book. It still needs the gospel. We have to help the gospel get to Africa. You are paying for this. I am paying for this. I am outraged. I hope you will as well. Slavery is an important issue. Slave masters were nice guys. And in fact, slavery was a good thing. Slaves being beaten to death, not common, because of course they were property. Neither were the majority of slaveholders treated their slaves well. It was just great. But slavery has another dimension. Slavery is a good thing. By the way, there's a Democratic state representative by the name of Kim McDaniels from the northern part of Jacksonville, who is very quick to point out that slavery, she's Black, slavery was a good thing because it brought pagan Blacks from Africa here to these shores where they could be baptized in the name of Jesus Christ. And you're paying for this. I'm paying for this. The KKK was great. It was A-OK. That's from a curriculum from the Bob Jones University Press, United States History for Christian Schools. The KKK was fighting the decline in morality and using the symbol of the cross. Right? Klan targeted bootleggers, wife beaters, and immoral movies. I don't think I have to provide a commentary. The Great Depression wasn't as bad as liberals made it sound. Those of you who are liberals, I'm one, and not at all ashamed. The Depression, though, wasn't as bad as at least my parents taught me. Grapes of Wrath included rumors of mortgage foreclosures, mass evictions, hunger riots, exaggerated statistics. Okay? And that's A. Becca Book's curriculum, United States History, Heritage of Freedom. Let's go to the Supreme Court of the United States, and this is the Burger Court. Don't look for people we know today. SCOTUS, enslaved fetuses. A. Becca Book's book on the American government and Christian perspective. The Supreme Court of the United States ignored 3,500 years of Judeo-Christian civilization, religion, and so on and so forth. Unborn child was not a living person, but the property of the mother. I'm glad I know who I'm talking to, and I don't have to amplify this, but if you'd like to talk about it some more. The Red Scare isn't over yet. Okay, so we have to worry about it. And this empowers the, if certain candidates get elected, we're going to have socialism, and socialism has destroyed the world and so on. This is part of it. And that's, again, from A. Becca Book's American Government and Christian Perspective. Okay? Satan hates the family and has hurled his venom against it in the form of communism. Mark Twain and Emily Dickinson were a couple of hacks. Twain was self-centered. Emily Dickinson's poetry, presumptuous attitude concerning eternal destiny. You're paying for that to be taught, just as I am. Abstract algebra is too damn complicated. So you don't need to learn algebra. Unlike modern math theorists who believe mathematics is the creation of man, and thus arbitrary and relative, Beck, book, teaches that the laws of mathematics are a creation of God and thus absolute. And it's attractive, legible, workable, traditional mathematics text, but nothing's really too hard or too advanced or too abstract. Gay people, and this we know, funding religious schools means that they're going to teach gay people have no more claims to special rights than child molesters or rapists. And that's from, there's the textbook at the bottom of the page. There's no global environmentalists have said and written enough. There's no doubt that their goal is to destroy the prosperous economies of the world's richest nations. This is being taught by prosperity, work and prosperity in a Christian perspective. You're paying for this. Globalization is why the push to get us out of the UN, get us out of NATO, get us out of Pacific Rim organization, and so on. It's the precursor to the rapture. Economics, work and prosperity in Christian perspective by Beck. Adolf Hitler was bad, but what the Muslims do to the Jews is worse. And this is a 700 Club at Robertson said it, and this finds its way into high school curriculums in these religious schools as well. Here is the aforementioned, and I'm going to wind up in just a minute, Andy Tuck, who is the chair of your State Board of Education and mine, and he has said, I won't support any evolution being taught as fact in any of our schools. So you are paying for the kind of education that he's hoping to put into our schools here in the state of Florida. All right, this is not so relevant from another presentation, but verse 5 here of the Gospel according to Matthew chapter 6, when you pray, don't pray as the hypocrites. They love to pray standing in the synagogues. Verse 6, thou, when thou prayest, enter into a closet, shut your door. You don't need public displays like invocations that are said in the name of Jesus Christ to make sure that people who don't believe in Jesus Christ feel like second-class citizens, but they're failing to listen to Matthew chapter 6. So with that, I'll finish up. You can get involved by contacting AU. So you'll receive very good emails. You'll become a member, like the Atlantic Coast chapter. But Judy and I talked about forming a West Coast chapter. There's a new way of looking at local activism that you, in fact, yourself can become a local activist and be part of a bulletin board and become apprised of things that are of concern to all of us by contacting au.org. I'll be happy to help you as well. You can, of course, always contact your local officials. We have just finished and been part of a study that's discovered, by the way, that local officials really are avid readers of letters to the editor columns in newspapers. But you can also write to them. Now, and I'm ashamed to say this as a clergyman, but when you contact a congressional office, for example, by the way, well, I can't ask you to raise your hands. Maybe later you could raise your hand whether you've done that or not. In general, you're talking to a 22-year-old intern or low paid. You're not talking to anybody sophisticated, but they do record yes and no. You will be asked your zip code. So there's no sense in contacting somebody from a different constituency. For a while, we were trying to contact, Judy, I'll get to you in a second. We were trying to contact Gary Siplin, was a state representative from Apopka, and he is responsible for the fact that in the state of Florida, the official December greeting of the state of Florida is Merry Christmas. Okay, so congratulations, you're in the state where the official greeting is Merry Christmas because of the belief that there's a war on Christmas and we're trying to take the Christ out of Christmas. Judy, did you want to go ahead and, you have to unmute.
I was just putting my thumbs up that yes, I had done that, so I wasn't asking
okay.
any questions.
Yeah, I urge you, by the way, you should do it just for the fun of it.
Yes.
Find some issue you really will. Well, Judy, how did you feel after you had done it?
Well, I always feel I do it frequently, and I also write letters to the editor frequently. So I always feel good after I do that because I know that they're getting my view and getting a view that they don't normally hear. And I also encourage all of our members to do it because it's important for them to know we're out here and watching them.
Absolutely. Now, I will tell you that our research, which we're part of, discovered several things. First of all, it's hard to ignore a telephone call. Did they ask you your zip code? They'll ask you no more than your zip code, really. And because they want to know their constituent. You can call, we have discovered. You can write a letter, U.S. Postal Service. You can send an email, and you can send a fax. If you're not familiar with Fax Zero or eFax, it's free. You can send a fax. The congressional offices do not have the ability to discern them. They think that you're 4 different constituents. So if you want to have a voice, you can do that. Don't quote me on that either. It's not exactly the moral way to behave. But we also discovered, perhaps not surprisingly, you may want to handwrite a letter by U.S. Postal Service. Why handwrite? They are so rare. Some of these young interns have never seen a handwritten letter. And so if you handwrite a letter, you'll get the attention. And in the end, you'll feel better. It's a good thing to do. And Americans United, and particularly here in Florida, from time to time, designate days on which we'll all write letters, or we'll all send emails, or we'll all send faxes, and so on.
But can they read the letter when it arrives?
That, by the way, our suspicion is they only look at the first. Make sure you have your subject on the first line, because even if it's typed, they won't read it except the first line. And then they have a checklist. These people are for it. These people are against it. These people are for women's reproductive rights. These people are against it. These people are for, separation of church and state. These people are against it. These people are for, Obamacare. These people are against it, for example. Go ahead, Mr. Atkins.
Hello. I'm here because my computer upstairs failed. Anyway, it's been a pleasure and hearing your talk. And I'm a former member of Americans United. We had two chapters here in the Tampa Bay area, one in Tampa, one in St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it was so successful. We had Barry Lynn here on almost a yearly basis. Oh, okay. And at any rate, if we start another chapter, can the national office be of help in terms of contacting former members to let them know that? Yeah, I already been through that. Oh, never mind.
Wait, Judy, don't. If you, I've spoke to Judy about that, but I will tell all of you. The model being used, apparently the chapter model appeals only to those of us, and I see very few of us, who carry Medicare cards. Right? To people in their 50s and 40s and 30s, they're not so interested. So the new model is that each of us as individuals are activists and will receive regular updates and be part of conversations that we can respond to by email and be in touch. I don't happen to be comfortable with that model, but I'm old. Those of you who are younger may like it. However, it is possible to have groups of activists and to form a loose association that's not called a chapter, and then have Rachel Lazar is the current CEO, or staff members come to Florida and speak to us as well, and hold meetings once or twice or 3 times a year. The Washington office does have a long and elaborate list that they sort by zip code. So if you give them the zip codes, let's say we want everyone to become an activist, and I hope you will, and you'll see how to do that at au.org. that we band together and want to bring down a staff member to speak at some venue in the Tampa area, that they will notify everybody within whatever zip codes we give them. And that way, and so they have that list, they retain that list. For anybody who in the past 20 years has given $5 to Americans United, they have contact information that they'll let them know about local activities. So yes, I agree that we should work together, meet together to reinforce each other as well. Other questions? Yeah. Andrea, I see you're here. You have to unmute, or you be unmuted by Judy, I think.
Yes. Hello.
Merrill, please call me. By the way, everybody, call me
Hello,
Merrill. Call me
yes,
Merrill.
Mine is a personal question. Is it okay if I ask you a personal question?
Absolutely, and I mentioned before, if you would like to ask me questions that you never get a chance to ask a rabbi, you're going to feel free, and I'm more than happy. I do not get offended. No question is out of bounds. I love questions. So go ahead.
Okay. I was born Jewish, and I participated in all of that, Hebrew school and all that, and I grew up and got away from it, and now it's not important anymore. So I'm curious about how is it that you became a rabbi and then all of a sudden changed your belief?
How all of a sudden I changed my beliefs?
Yeah, suddenly you are a Jew that does not believe in God. So how did that happen? How do you put those together? You became a rabbi and then you don't believe in God. Did you not believe in God when you became a rabbi?
No, I've always believed in God, I'm afraid. Although I'm a member of the Free Thought Society of Northeast Florida and support you and what you're doing, please do not impute to Judaism what you know of Christianity. That is, in Christianity, if you don't believe God, I think you're an awful person, you're a terrible person, you're certainly going to hell. Judaism says you don't have to believe in God.
Oh.
You are a fine person, and you are good, you will be in hell. By the way, we don't believe in hell so that people won't suffer. What happens, unfortunately, and this is the rabbi question, the separation of church and state, what happens, unfortunately, is that people impute to Judaism what they know of Christianity. And we are not Christians. And thus, if you don't believe in God, that's fine. As I tell people, if you don't believe in God or you question God, that's fine. She's pretty tough and she can do it. So, and actually we believe God has no body, but so God can't be male, female, black, white, Asian, tall, short, blonde, whatever. So I believe in God. You will find that Americans United for Separation of Church and State, unlike the Freedom from Religion Foundation, for example, is far from hostile to religion. In fact, we find it's most effective to work with clergy. And our board, Barry Lynn was an ordained clergyman. Many of our board members and staff members are ordained clergy. We are not at all hostile. As I told Judy and some of the others who were here earlier, well, Barry Lynn, for example, when I lived in Richmond, Virginia, took a stand at the local editorial board of the Richmond Times-Dispatch, said he is a tool of Satan. And it was great for those of us who were clergy to point out that he's a clergyman. We're not tools of Satan. We believe in this country. We believe in its values. Excuse me. And you're going to regret that I feel a sermon coming over me, so I'm going to lie down and let it pass for a few minutes. But we have been shown very clearly in the past few weeks and months that our democracy and this great American experiment is a lot more fragile than we think it is. Yeah. We need to stand up and say, there's a reason why you're supporting the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, separation of church and state, the bulwark against the theocracy is critical to how our country functions, and we're not going to let it be trampled upon. So yeah, we are, I believe in God, and many of us do. I respect people who don't. That's their choice. All you have to do, by the way, is love justice, love mercy, do justice, and walk with humility. And if you don't believe in God, you're fine with me. And Andrea, if your mother was Jewish,
Right.
and there were 9, now those of you know, in Judaism, certain prayers are only said with a quorum of 10 people. Andrea, if 9 Jews were in a room and you walked in, I would say there's a quorum of Jews.
Yay. Thank
By
you.
the way, at another time, and I'll be happy to talk about it, Judaism is not a religion.
It's not what? I didn't hear
It
you.
is not a religion.
Right, it's a way of life. I mean, I had very warm
it's-
feelings about all of that from
It's a
childhood.
little more complicated than that, but it's certainly not a religion. Doesn't depend on what you believe or
I've
not.
always said that. I've always said that. Do you think Jews are a race?
No, absolutely not, because you can renounce your Judaism. I don't think African Americans can renounce their Africanism.
Yeah.
Asians can't renounce being an Asian. It's not a race. Doesn't work.
One other thing, you said
Okay,
you
and then
still
if there are
believe
any
in
questions, raise your hands or.
God? Oh,
no.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
My time's up. Oh, you said you believe in a God.
Yes.
I thought you were an atheist.
No, I'm not an atheist.
Oh, well, what do you call yourself if you're going to have a label?
What do I call? I call myself a Jew.
Okay, I like
Okay.
that.
By the way, I rely often on the proof of the existence of God of the philosopher Rene Descartes.
Oh,
Okay, who
I didn't hear that.
looked at the motion of the earth around the sun and said it's like a giant clock. If there's a clock, there needs to be a clock maker. Who's the clock maker? That's God.
Thank you,
Okay.
Andrea. We have some other people. Bill Norsworthy, you were next.
Pardon me?
Bill
go ahead.
Norsworthy had the next question.
Bill,
Thank
go
you,
ahead.
Andrea.
My question is about how far off the chart is Florida?
I'll tell you, when the board of directors of AU gets together, we have competitions, okay? We have people from Louisiana who say, oh, we're the worst. No, Mississippi chimes in, Rita Brown, that's Barbara Forrest from Louisiana, Rita Brown. We're pretty good. And by the way, in part of it is virtue of its size. The Texas people often win. We're certainly in the top 5, but all over the country. We're not seeing anything that's not all over the country. And that is an increasing tendency towards theocracy, increasingly powerful religious interests that are problematic. By the way, Florida is one of 37 states. It has what's called the Blaine Amendment. And so we're fortunate to have that, but as you see from the school voucher scheme, the Florida tax credit, corporate tax credit scholarship scheme, they've worked around it. The Blaine Amendment in the Constitution of Florida and 37 other states says no money from the state shall go to support any religious or sectarian organization. So we're good as far as that's concerned, but more often than not, that's honored in the breach.
So have the other states adopted this same workaround from Alex?
Yes. In fact, that's what this Espinoza versus Montana case was about. That they wanted public money to go to fund religious education. By the way, they'll argue, and I mentioned earlier before the meeting started, I think this arguments I had with somebody named Doug Tuthill. He's the founder of, and he comes from your area. He's the founder of Step Up for Students. And he said, well, you know, if you take a student out of the public schools and have them go to a private school, the public schools are saving money. They don't have to pay for that student. And I said, oh, when a student leaves Pinellas or Manatee or Hillsborough schools and goes to a private school, does that mean the superintendent gets a cut in pay? Does that mean bus drivers make less? Does that mean, it's nonsensical. But on the issue of these schools are a battleground. Look at our national, our federal government's head of the Department of Education, Betsy DeVos, right, who has a lot of influence in the Orlando area where the Magic played, was the DeVos Center, and lots of funding. She is there. What we perceive as a war on public education. And that public education, after all, is a government program, and government programs are all bad. We also point to the 20 years beginning January 20th, 1961. On January 20th, 1961, if you were like me, you were glued to your television, and John Fitzgerald Kennedy was sworn in as the President of the United States and said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. 20 years later, and on January 20th, 1981, Ronald Reagan was sworn in, and he said, don't ask the government.
Government is the problem.
Problems, the government is the problem. And in that 20 years, we lost. And people see public schools as run by the government. By the way, there's something called perception of value. They perceive public schools, they're free. So they can't be very good. They're Dollar Tree type schools. But a private school with a fancy tuition, oh, that's, my kid will get a top-notch education. It's not so, and we know it. But I hate to quote P.T. Barnum, but there's a fool born every minute. I hate to note, those of you who understand, know what IQ is, will have to remember that 50% of all Floridians have an IQ under 100. Okay, as 50% of all Americans have an IQ under 100. And unfortunately, people are being taken in. People fail to think. So what I urge you to do is to join me in getting people to think and use their heads about these things. That was a longer answer than you wanted, Bill, but thank you for the question.
Very good answer.
Jim Young, you're next.
I used to be involved with AU, and the situation since I left the United States is, since 2000, it's just gone to hell in a handbasket. And it doesn't seem like the free thought movement is making any progress. We know that the key to controlling the country is the education of children. The religious right recognizes that as well, and they have taken control of the children. So we don't have control of the children anymore. It's a very sad situation. When you look at the Becca books that you gave us examples from, I'm surprised that they don't teach in that book that divorce is prohibited by God, and that it's considered adultery, and those commit adultery should be killed. And I'm surprised that they're not calling for slavery so that we can save the poor. I had some Becca books years ago when I was in the United States. I'm surprised that they're not advocating murdering children who are disobedient to their parents or disrespect their parents. And I wonder if maybe to some degree, the more extreme these books get, it might be better to, in a way, that if parents ever see the books and what's in them, that they might actually rebel against this extremism, this brainwashing. So, I mean, if you read the Bible, the Old Testament, the God of the Old Testament advocates killing people for being fortune tellers, palm readers, spiritualists who hold seances. The list goes on and on for so many petty and ridiculous transactions. There doesn't even exist a witch, but the God of the Bible he mandates that you kill witches. So if somebody reports to their neighbor and says, "Oh, I think they're a witch," apparently the God of the Bible is condoning killing innocent people. I don't want to get into off course here, but if some of this crap were to make it into the Becca books, it might work to our advantage because, Christians are not willing to kill people because they tell fortunes or practice astrology. I'm done.
I, of course, would dispute your view of the First Testament, and I'll be happy to argue that at some other time, but I don't share your view of the First Testament. I make a point of never, ever reading it in translation. So someday we can talk about that. But more importantly, I'd like to, you raise a very important point that I think we all need to remember and remind ourselves of constantly. The religious right did not take over our schools. The religious right did not take over our schools. We, by our inattention, we ceded, C-E-D-E-D, we ceded control to them. And it's our role now, if we are good, honest, upright people devoted to the law and the Constitution, to take it back and not allow ourselves to become complacent. And I don't know what the turnout rate of registered voters is in elections in your part of the world, but too many people don't seem to care. Too many people are not interested. When the religious right got their foot in the door, we said fine. When they put their nose in the tent, we said fine. Now all of a sudden, they're running everything. We ceded control to them. By the way, in a way, they are built to do that better. Much of what they believe I believe, can be reduced to a bumper sticker. And we have a little bit more depth of our thought and can't reduce what we think to a bumper sticker. We have more elaborate and sophisticated ideas, but we need to go out and sell them. Now, let me stop the meeting for just a second, because I'm going to say we're no longer meeting for about 30 seconds under the auspices of the Atheist Society or AU, because I can't speak this way under the umbrella of a 501c3 organization. But I am increasingly, and I have people around me who are increasingly believing that the answer to these problems that you cite, Jim, are found at the ballot box. Okay? We can't advocate as nonprofit organizations, but we need to start more PACs. You need to target a just one difficult person as far as separation of church and state in your community, and say, we're going to get together and we're going to defeat this person. We're going to defeat them because they insist on invocations that are divisive, or they insist on religious education, or they insist on a creche or a Santa and reindeer on the lawn of City Hall, or they insist on Bible reading in schools, or whatever. And we need to marshal ourselves. And so rather than cede control, we have to retake control, not on our own behalf, not on our community, on behalf of the founders of our country, the framers of the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. And then I'll leave it at that also. But if you want to talk about this further, I'd be happy to, Jim.
I have a quick question for you that goes along this line, and that is, how does one counter the argument about free exercise? Because the right has taken over that whole thing about, if we don't allow school and prayer, we're hindering the free exercise of religion.
You know what? That's another set of slides I looked at today. How, in fact, the concept of religious freedom has become a tool of white supremacists. And by and large, I have to do that on an ad hoc basis, but by and large, they want free exercise, but they want us to pay for the venue. They want us to pay for the platform. They want us to, so we should, what we need to do is remove that from them. You can pray if you want. Before, by the way, this came up in our own Flagler County Commission. that instituted prayer, an opening prayer in Jesus' name. And they said it's important to pray. We need prayer. We need to be prayed. And I urged them and got several people. You have 3 minutes. You can talk as a member of the public to these committees. And several of us for 3 minutes said, we agree. You should pray. And we think every school board member, every county commission member should, for the 30 minutes prior to the start of the meeting, in their office, get down on their hands and knees and pray. But not to pray during a meeting that I'm paying for the room, and I'm paying for the air conditioning, and I'm paying for the upkeep, and I'm paying for the maintenance. And I have started an unusual movement that's caught on a little bit amongst some of my colleagues with AU. I have said churches may endorse political candidates. Their free speech is, that's fine. However, they have to tell anybody who writes a check to them, you may not deduct that check on Schedule B, is it, or Schedule A of your Form 1040, because we are no longer a tax-exempt organization. So when people come to and say, you're impinging on my free speech, I can urge everybody to vote for Donald Trump because he's a good religious person. I have trouble saying that with a straight face, I'm sorry. That you can do that. But then checks to your church countries are no longer tax deductible. And so that's the issue. Those are the kind of issues that we need to counter. We are too polite. We are too pacifist. We are too anti-militant. Sometimes we're too complacent. Sometimes we learn to boil inside our guts and not allow the steam to vent through our ears and through our mouths and through our actions. And we can't do that. And that's why, by the way, I'll appeal to you to sign up as be in touch with me. If there's not a Tampa Bay chapter, we'll form some kind of group and discuss and help others know. I don't understand why my neighbor's blood isn't boiling about these things either, but I think it's because we really haven't told them, and we need to tell them.
I agree with you completely.
Anyway, again, I keep falling into what I feel like I'm giving a sermon. I apologize.
It's okay.
Just a bit.
I'm sorry, Eileen, you had your hand up earlier. Did you have a question you wanted to ask? Joanne. You're muted, Eileen.
Yeah, you'll need to unmute, Eileen.
I just went, it was when Andrea was going on, and I was saying, well, like remembers my father always said, if he hadn't been born Catholic, he wished he had been born Jewish.
No.
I don't know why, it always sticks in my head. But he really did appreciate the orthodox of it, I think. And that's what, but like, unfortunately, the Catholic Orthodox, I think if I'd been an Episcopalian, I would not have become an atheist. They wouldn't have been, they weren't, they seem to be more, less ritualist. That's all I wanted to comment, but thank you for
You raise an important point, and I am as critical, by the way, of the right wing of Judaism as I am of the right wing of Christianity and the right wing of Islam. Anybody's right says, and the issue of the right wing is the pastor, the priest, does the thinking for the parishioners. And we need to take a stance to say, you need to do the heavy lifting here. You need to think for yourself. When I came on the board of AU, I'll try to be brief on this story. There was an elementary school principal from Houston, Texas, whose name was Charlotte Kofeld. And Charlotte Kofeld said that she came in one Monday morning. There was a parent, clearly angry, a mother, waiting to pounce. So she invited her into her office, sit down, let's talk. The mother started and says, I don't like the idea that you're teaching my kindergarten student about the homosexual lifestyle. And I don't like the idea that you're urging my son, 5-year-old, to be a homosexual, to be gay. and that you're praising and encouraging, homosexuality, and that you're supporting this. Charlotte Kofeld looks and says, I can't believe that I have a kindergarten teacher who's teaching says, Mrs. Jones, how do you know that this is being taught in your child's classroom? And she said, because my pastor told us so from the pulpit on Sunday. And in the end, the moral of the story is, think for yourself. Don't let your pastor think for you. Don't let your priest, don't let your rabbi, you have to think for yourself. And it's much easier to have somebody else do the thinking for you. But in the end, we need to do our own thinking. I'm sorry, I'm becoming again too sermonic.
You have your hand up?
Here we go. As I said, I'm moving. Last night I pulled the mezuzah down off the door to pack, and I realized there's a little prayer in it that just doesn't work for me anymore.
Yeah.
It's been quite a few years. I'm thinking of something else, something of the nature of, may everyone who enters this house support science, rationality, caring, and love. Am I, as a Reformed Jew, atheist, pescatarian, allowed to change what's inside the mezuzah without any problems?
Absolutely. And by the way, there are no prayers in the mezuzah. There is a text from the book of Exodus and a text from the book of, the book of Deuteronomy, and from the book of Numbers, the fifth and fourth book of the 5 books of Moses. And they speak to a God of the first chapter of Genesis, who said, there'll be waters above, there'll be waters below. There'll be land over here, there'll be water over here. There will be darkness here and light here, and took chaos and put it in order. And then that same God said, from now on, force is going to equal mass times acceleration. And the voltage in a given circuit is going to equal the amperage, the current, I times R times the resistance. And that E is going to equal MC squared. And that the gravitational pull between two bodies is going to equal the mass of one minus the mass of the other over the radius, the distance between them, and so on. So God is the God of order, is in that mezuzah, that thing on your doorpost, but you can take it out and put in whatever you'd like, by all means.
What book of the Bible was that in?
By the way, it's referring to, that's the first chapter of Genesis.
But it starts out, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all might, and put these words on your doorpost. Yeah,
okay, and it says, put them on the doorposts of your homes and on your gates, so that you're reminded that there's a God of order and so on. The problem is that all too many of us stopped learning about that text when we were 13, 14, 15, 16. So we're all, not you, but me, I'm walking around in a 70-year-old body with a 13-year-old's idea of what religion is. And of course it's not satisfying. And of course it's no good, because the 13, but you have to continue to learn and to study and to think for yourself and not accept what other people tell you. By the way, everything I told you today and everything you've heard from me, do not believe me. Don't listen to me. Go find it out for yourself. I'm urging you, you can write, I'll sign it in blood. Do not listen to me. Find out about it for yourself. Okay, so yes, you can take down the mezuzahs and put something else in if you'd like. No?
Well, first off, I wanted to say I'm very impressed with your command of physics. I say I'm very impressed with your command of physics and your knowledge of the correct formulas.
My undergraduate work is in electrical engineering, but go ahead.
That would explain it then.
Yeah.
Well, at any rate, I also wanted to say that if anyone is interested in pursuing an alternative idea about what Judaism is, there is a group called the Society for Humanistic Judaism.
Yeah.
I have a feeling you're probably familiar with it.
I am. In fact, I think Paul Golden is in your area, lives in your area. The president of the national organization, I think, is in your area. I'm not sure, or was.
I wasn't aware of that either.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have to check that out.
I mean, by the way, I have often confronted speakers at the Free Thought Society of Northeast Florida about whether or not they are conflating two different good English words. One word is religion, and the other word is Christianity. And they will admit that what they had to say, criticism, doesn't really apply to Islam, Buddhism, or Hinduism, or Taoism, or Judaism, or anything else. And so that's an issue. But yeah, you can look at this for the Society of Humanistic Judaism. You can be in touch with me. I'll send you to these places. And again, you can discover it for yourself. Don't listen to me.
We always listen to you. At any rate, nobody
listens to me. Should I put the picture of my children back up? And then nobody listens to me.
You earlier averred that that we have to concentrate in our electoral efforts on individuals who are particularly troublesome. Well, here in this area, we have a rich panoply of just such individuals.
That any political expression made in this meeting is a personal.
Judy, I can't hear you.
Any political statement made is a personal expression, not a statement of the group.
Right. You know what? Then again, we're closing down the 501c3 part of this meeting, and now we're talking as friends. So,
but in any case, this is not
you have what we call a target-rich community. Go ahead.
Yes,
we do.
Yes.
Yes, we do. Is that all you want?
That's
Okay. Jim
Okay.
Young has another question.
So choose someone and let everyone know that this is your issue. This is why you're doing it. And I can't, again, advocate for political thing. And so, but we have someone here who we actually believe is involved with white supremacy organizations who happens to be on our county commission. And we're investigating that and targeting him.
Jim Young, if it's yours.
Yes, I'd like to make a comment about the Old Testament not being the valid representation of Judaism. I think I had this same conversation with you probably 20 years ago at a conference. And my argument then was that when we are talking to lay people or members of the community who are not familiar with Judaism, they are only familiar with one version of the Bible. That's essentially the printed version that they have in their living room. Okay, so now it could be the King James Version or the New International Version or what have you, but the portrayal of God and God's will and his intolerant law is understood by them to be what is actually in their living room, not what you might know that they don't know. So when we talk to these people, I, as an activist, try to engage them. I have no choice but to engage them on their level, so that because that's the level that they're going to engage me. So I have to talk to them about the Old Testament God that's in their Bible and their living room and the one that they want to defend. And that's why I talk to people who defend slavery. I talk to people who defend every atrocity imaginable that's in the Old Testament, in their Bible, in their living room. And my problem is getting them to employ critical thinking and ethics. Ethics is extremely important. These people have no clue about ethics. So when you talk about killing gays, it doesn't occur to them that they're destroying human lives. When they talk about trying to destroy the lives of atheists, it never occurs to them that they are doing evil. Now, I define evil as that which damages human life. Now, it goes much more, it goes beyond that. But certainly, that one aspect is evil. If we go about through our intolerance, our sectarianism, and hate, we're damaging lives as human beings. Every life should have value and be respected because it has value. You shouldn't have to earn respect just because you're different. It should be given to you automatically. So that if I meet someone like yourself, the first thing I should do is respect you. And then on a level playing field of respect, we can actually engage and talk about the issues. But this is, I think, the number one obstacle that I'm encountering. These people, these fanatics, I'm talking about fanatics. I'm not talking about your liberal Christians who love their neighbors. I'm talking about the fanatics that hate their neighbors, and they hate everybody else. They hate Muslims, they hate gays, they hate atheists, and they're misogynists, and the list goes on and on. This is a problem, and I'm at a loss as how we're going to change it, because they're not teaching ethics in public education.
Yeah, by the way, I don't know if the role of public education may be to teach ethics. Primarily, that should come from the home and the family, but there too, we have an abdication of their role. But let me go back, because one of the things I did not include was the discussion I have used in other groups, discussion of the notion of biblical inerrancy. And that's these schools that are being supported with our tax dollars are encouraging the concept of biblical inerrancy and the very literal reading of a poem. By the way, if I were to even read to you in Hebrew, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz v'haaretz hayta tohu v'vohu v'choshech al pnei tehom v'ruach Elohim mirachevet al pnei ha'mayim, you could hear the poetry in the first chapter of the book of Genesis and know that it's a poem. It was not meant to be read literally. And I will often engage these people and tell them, as I'll tell you, on Friday, the stock market shrugged off bad news, right? And so how wide are the shoulders of the stock market that it can shrug? When, and I thought it was Edgar Allan Poe, I might be wrong, said the fog crept in on little cat feet. How long were the claws? How many whiskers did that cat have? That's the kind of literalists that we're dealing with who miss the larger picture, often which contains an ethical message and a message about morality that they miss entirely because they're so focused not just on the leaves, but on the veins in the leaves and the cells in the leaves, and miss the entire forest. So they read much too literally. And in fact, some of the things you've discussed, Reverend Young, is a much more literal interpretation than comes across the way I read the text. And that's the problem. Now, is everyone welcome to read as literally as? Absolutely. But not to enforce against others that they should read it as literally as you. And not to, you should fund education so that I can teach these students to think as literally as I do and not as you do. That's where the problem lies. At any rate.
With that, I think we'll go ahead and bring this to a close, because I know you said you had to be somewhere at another meeting at 7.
I'm over Zoomed, I'm afraid, but yes.
I know the feeling.
I think many of you are.
Yes.
But the the other side of the coin is my neighbor said they did a large load of washed all their pajamas yesterday because they like to go to work in clean clothes. You could have spent your time this evening doing lots of other things. There's good things on TV, even a baseball game, and so many other things. The fact that you've devoted yourself to this and to this topic and to this organization makes me proud to have had the ability to talk to you and to listen and hear you. And I hope we'll, in Hebrew we say, Nishmar al Kesher, guard the connection, maintain the connection that we've started this evening, and move forward for the common good, not only of ourselves, but of all the citizens of Florida, and ultimately all the citizens of the United States who will benefit mightily from a strong wall of separation, of which Thomas Jefferson spoke, the separation between church and state. So thank you, and thank you for asking me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm flattered. I'm flattered.
Thank you, Merrill.
Thank you. Take care.
I really appreciated hearing your presentation. It was excellent. I'm glad to see you again after so many years, and I was really looking forward to it, and you have not disappointed me at all. Thank you so much. And I just wish that the people that I talked to about religion were like you.
Well, thank you very much. Given where you are, I'm going to tell people I spoke and I got international acclaim. Is that okay?
Yes, it is. That's great.
Okay. Thank you all. Have a good evening. Stay safe. Wear your masks, social distance, wash your hands, and one day this will all be over, I'm told.
Yes, and this too shall pass.
Yeah, this too shall pass. Exactly. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming, and we'll see you next week. And we'll talk
Thanks
about
you all
climate.
very much. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you. Thanks
What
everyone.
was it?
Thanks,
There
we'll
was
see you next week.
oh, you know what? I missed the chat. Listen.
Ah,
Good. Okay. How do you turn your brain off to get to their level?
yes.
It's not so easy, but we need, social workers in particular know the rule. You have to go to the patient where they are, not where you want them to be, not where you think they should be, not where you are. You got to go talk to them on their level. And we're not very good communicators. We learn to communicate better. At any rate, you're on Meetup, and I'll be in touch with Judy, and I look forward to chatting with each of you again. Again, have a good evening. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any man for me?